edition of the Mindset Game podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. Before we get started with this week's show, first off, let me take this opportunity to welcome back the regular listeners. And if this is your first time listening to the show, I hope you enjoy this episode and decide to subscribe to the show. On today's show, I've got Dennis Simsek. Dennis is a certified NACBT life coach and NLP master practitioner. He helps individuals and groups see where the obstacles in their lives are and mentors them to reach their goals and full potential. And not forgetting, he's also the founder and host of The Anxiety Guy, a top-ranked self-help podcast where he shares his knowledge and experience on the causes of anxiety, as well as the best options for people going through these life challenges. So welcome onto the show, Dennis.
Thank you very much, James. I'm honored to be here, and I hope we can create some value for your listeners today.
That's my pleasure, and thanks for coming on. So before we delve into today's episode, Dennis, can we talk about, obviously, what was the catalyst for you wanting to obviously go into working with anxiety?
The thing is we have to go back a little bit to my days as a child and as a rising tennis player and trying to be a professional tennis player growing up. There was a lot of anxiety around me. My father, for instance, was very hard on me, and he suffered from an anxiety disorder. His father suffered from an anxiety disorder. So I was surrounded by intentions that were clearly directed towards you have to accomplish something in your life in order for you to sleep well and to feel good about yourself. And because this was the case, I went day by day in my life thinking that, you know what, life is a struggle. Life is always going to be a struggle. Everything is uphill. You got to work hard for this. You got to work hard for that. And I never truly grasped the idea of relaxation or calmness or peace or love or gratitude or any of these things, because I was shooting for the next thing, hitting 500 forehands a day and then missing one and then having your dad yell at you is kind of ridiculous in a way. But my passion growing up was always based around trying to help other people with their problems. So with that side of me that always wanted to contribute and having anxiety growing up and into my 20s and such, I started, in fact, developing health anxiety, which is hypochondria. So it was a combination of making a mountain out of a molehill and having generalized anxiety, but at the same time being very, very sensitive as far as sensations in my body went, and then having panic attacks after that and such. So after suffering from that for 6 years and then overcoming it in 3 months through CBT and NLP, as well as Buddhism practices, I said, you know what, there has to be a reason for this. My higher up, my higher self, I'm being guided. I've got to contribute towards helping other people because I've suffered. And that's basically where it started. It started with the idea that I've gone through something here, and how can I use this suffering to, in fact, help other people? Because anxiety for me was the best and the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
But if we go back to your tennis days, obviously there's this issue of the pushy parent. Do you think it kind of instilled you to kind of loathe the sport in a sense?
To dislike the sport?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Growing up, I didn't really know. I didn't have any options. I didn't have an option to say, yes, I'm passionate about this. Yes, I like this. Yes, I love this, or I don't like it. It was brought upon me, as it is for many kids out there, with parents having dreams for this and that for their child. And so I never took the time or had the voice because of how intimidating my dad was in this arena. So I had no options. And then when my parents separated at around 16, 17, I finally came up with the conclusion that, you know what, I never really was enjoying what I was doing because I was being forced to go into it. So at that point in my life, I started to go in other directions. I started to play other sports. I started to become more crafty, more artsy, whatever it is, and started to find peace in my life. So there was there was some moments there between 16 and 25 where everything was quite free flowing. But to answer the question, I mean, I never had, it was a blur. My childhood was a complete blur. Going from the age of 3 when I started playing tennis, Dennis, you're going to play Wimbledon. You're going to be top 10 in the world. You're going to make lots of money. I'm going to sit, on the sidelines and watching you in Grand Slams. And I said, Dad, I never really, I never questioned it, right? Because once my dad had something in his mind, that's how it was going to be. And neither my mom or his friends or his parents or me was going to change that. So it was a very difficult, emotional household.
But now you're a practitioner. Do you see that and quite evident in young people to today, obviously, with having parents like that? What are kind of some of the skills that you could help give them to implement to maybe not get in that kind of vicious cycle of what anxiety can bring?
The truth is that with the kids that are, for me as a parent, and I have a 7-year-old myself, I've been able to say and reframe the whole experience, first of all, with my dad. I said, you know what? He's not a horrible person, okay? He's not this or that. He was doing the best he could with the information that he had. And the way I looked at that was that, you know what? His parents couldn't teach him what they don't know, right? So in that regard, I couldn't continue beating him up and continue looking in the past and saying what a crappy childhood I had. I had to start reframing it and seeing it in a different light so I could feel better and move forward. But today, as me having a 7-year-old, I come from a place of being an observer more than being the dictator or the person that, because with men, a lot of times, and people that I deal with, men, women are the emotional ones. Men are the ones that feel the need to gain control, right? And that's control over the household in a lot of ways. I deal with a lot of people that go through this. So you have to come from a place of being an observer. And when you're an observer, you're going to pick up on certain traits and characteristics and passions that the child has. For instance, my kid loves, selling cards right now. He's in the phase of Pokemon and this and that and sports cards and all that sort of stuff. And so now he's interested as well as watching TV shows such as Shark Tank. When you look at Shark Tank, you're seeing these entrepreneurs, you're seeing these business people. So right away, I can tell that he's very passionate about solving problems, creating things in his life, cause and effect, this sort of stuff. So I can see where he's going right now. And the best thing I can do is just say, you know what? I'm going to help you do this. And he loves it. And now you're a team. So when I see parents out there, the best thing you can do is be an observer, okay, and just observing the traits and the passions that the kids have, and then pushing them in that direction, not pushing them, but guiding them in that direction so that, they can start to solve problems on their own and make mistakes on their own, because there truly is no such thing as failure. There's only feedback, right? And because there's only feedback, you've got to let the kid make mistakes on his own. You've got to let the kid go do the things he's passionate about.
But then on the flip side of that, Dennis, do you think that obviously the parents that are pushy, in some instances, they're living, you could say, their expectations of themselves when they're younger through their child?
Now, the parents that are pushy, you're saying can you rephrase that one more time?
It would be, I would see it, and I've seen it in the past with coaches like that obviously they've not achieved to the heights that maybe like your story attests to, that their parents wanted for them. So they obviously live their dreams through their child.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that's a huge point. That's a humongous point, because, there's a component there where here I have another chance. I have a second chance at this. I think my dad, who was trying to be a football professional that never made it, wanted the limelight. He wanted this. He wanted the attention. He wanted the money. He wanted the travels and this and that. And not so much for him, but he cared for me so much that he said, you know what? And he always told me, he said, you know what? The best lifestyle is to be an athlete. This, because of his, if you want to call it failures, the way he looked at things, because of this and me growing up and seeing that I've got a talent in sports, to push me in that direction was the best thing that he knew. He had a very tunnel vision kind of way of looking at life. He was very narrow. He never pushed me in school. He never said, you know what, you got to have good grades. You got to be entrepreneur-like. You got to learn coding or this and that. He never said those things. He was very one way. And you know what? The other thing is that when you have someone like this, and for me, I never had a choice to do anything different, you do in fact develop such characteristics that, like we discussed earlier, that you can develop into other areas of your life, such as discipline, such as determination, such as the willingness to be open-minded and problem solve, because in tennis, for instance, you've always got to go back and forth, change your strategies, change technically, all this sort of stuff. So there are fantastic things that I learned as I grew up and as my dad pushed me in the sport. But the problem was, I just wasn't completely passionate about it myself. And because that was the case, there was a ceiling as far as what I was going to achieve. I was never going to go that far because my heart wasn't completely in it. Right?
Mm-hmm. But with you having that you could say that glass ceiling, does that bring an element of anxiety in itself, because you're obviously limiting your capabilities and probably the long-term game, because you could possibly have this element of doubt within yourself?
I mean, absolutely. The whole journey itself for me was such a confusing thing, because as I was growing up, I realized my grandpa passed away, then my grandma passed away, and then people were passing away. And I was looking at this and going, you know what? Time is such an essential thing. I mean, as a kid growing up, you wouldn't really say, you don't really put it into a perspective where I've only got a certain amount of time. You don't know, right? You're just living life in the moment, which is fantastic. But the idea of I've got only a certain amount of time now caused some friction and some inner conflict within me, where I was doing something I wasn't truly passionate about. At the same time, I was wasting time, and I could have put that time into something I was passionate about. But at the same time, I had someone that didn't let me do that. So in that whole regard, you can see how much anxiety was being built internally, right? It was just this inner conflict, and I want to do different things, and I want to experience different things, but I can't, and so on. And then there was freedom at the age of 16 and 17, where it said, you know what, here's an opportunity for me. And I learned a lot between the ages of 16 and 24. And then my health anxiety started to come into play, panic disorder and stuff, and that dictated the next 6 years of my life, which I believe was the reason that my higher up, or God, or whatever it is, my God, wanted me to experience that so I could give back fully. And now, at the age of 36, 37, I can use that suffering and the things I learned to be able to contribute to other people and such. And that's why, the Anxiety Guy podcast is doing as well as it is right now.
But then it's also, do you not think, obviously, on reflection now, possibly, and it's not trying to put words into your mouth, that if you were able to do the things you did from the age of 16 to 25 younger, do you think you might have achieved better results in that field?
I think if I started with the things that I was passionate about, and the, naturally moving towards, the person I wanted to actually become at a younger age, I would have developed those skill sets a lot quicker, I believe. But, taking nothing away from the experience of growing up that way, because there is, like I mentioned, a lot of traits that I gained that now I apply to my own online business and other aspects of my life. Like we mentioned, motivation, determination, the ability to problem solve and such. These are things that you can't really learn in school. So in that regard, it was fantastic. My only problem with my growing up situation was that I didn't have any options. And all I wanted as a kid was to go play in the playground with other kids. I had no social life. I was itching for, I love my parents so very much. I wanted to keep them happy. I wanted to do good things for them and have good achievements and stuff. But I was itching for other things. I was itching for communication, love, and connection. I was itching for, a different way of feeling significant and contribution and all that sort of stuff. So, it was a two-way street. It really was. It was keeping people happy. It was, contemplating the idea of, is this for me or not? And then it was the idea of, what am I missing out on?
But listening to you speak there, Dennis, you could say you were kind of thrust into a kind of a professional sport / business environment at a young age. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's, I can't speak. It's mm-hmm. hard enough as an adult to be in that environment at times, let alone as a child.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was, if I told you that, because you're dealing with someone here where, in my father's eyes, I mean, it was like, it's either my way or the highway kind of thing. And it was so emotionally disruptive for the family's energy that, my dad could walk into a room and automatically, without saying a word, you could feel his vibration, you could feel his frequency, because most of communication is nonverbal. And because of this, you could really feel the negativity that was coming with his personality and the way he approached life. And when you have someone like this surrounding you each and every day for your entire life at such a young age, you start to believe and create some core beliefs within you that say, you know what? Maybe this is the way you should be looking at life. Maybe this is the way. Maybe violence does equal love. Maybe pushing someone into something and not giving them any options is the only way. There was lots of core beliefs and stuff that I had to go back and reframe and see it in a different light so that I could move on with my life. But the good thing is, like you mentioned, is because of those experiences, if you're ever caught up later on in life with someone like that, now that you've reframed stuff and overcome those core beliefs that are deep in the unconscious, you can deal with that stuff like it's nothing. There's people that come up to me now that have the same type of energy, and I'm able to just kind of go through it and get them to a softer place, and to see, for them to help them see the world in the big picture rather than in one narrow focus because their parents taught them to be that way. So absolutely right. I mean, you're looking at it in a way where the childhood was difficult, but moving forward in the business world and whatever other world that's, difficult to deal with as far as people and the environment goes, I mean, it was a plus. In that way, it was a plus.
But what would your saying be? Because obviously there's that psychological term that you are the, let's see if I can get this right. You are the resonance of the 5 people around you. Mm-hmm. Obviously, people outside of your family, when they are negative in that way, you can get rid of them. But what would you say if that was one of those people happened to be a family member? You can't really discard them because at a later date you might have to call upon them.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where the whole idea of, who's my role model when I'm growing up? My role models are my parents. Everybody's role model is their parents. Their role model is their teacher. Their role model is their best friend, that sort of stuff. And you can't completely disregard these people, but you can start learning ways of how to deal with these people, and learning ways to be flexible cognitively and behaviorally so that these people can start seeing the world in a different way. There was nothing healthy about that environment that I was growing up in. There was nothing healthy about it. It wasn't healthy for him. The amount of pills that he had in his cabinet, right? The amount of techniques he tried and all that sort of stuff, and the supplements and everything like that. It was like that for a very long time, but we can't disregard those people. Absolutely. And you can't change somebody that doesn't want to be changed. That's the thing, is you're going about life, and you could tell my dad all sorts of stuff, but because things have been processed so much over and over and over again, he's created so much repetition around these beliefs, so much emotion around these beliefs, that a part of him says this is the only way to live life. And you can't, consciously change somebody that way. In my experience, that someone who tries to fight any kind of change, you can only do it through a transic state or a hypnosis, methodology. So in that way, again, the environment was horrible. The environment wasn't healthy. I learned lots of lessons from the environment. I understood myself better growing up. I finally got to a place where I could do some of the things I wanted to do and follow some of the passions I wanted to. But I don't urge any parent to take a, my way or the highway kind of viewpoint, because it's a completely emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically unhealthy way to live for a child. And the best thing you can do is start developing more flexibility, right? More flexibility in how you see things. Even one tiny thing that you can change throughout the day, you're going to find that will transfer over to other things and transfer over to other things. So, that's, it's a two-way street. It really was.
But then, Dennis, you could say, obviously, that quote with "it's my way or the highway" is generally a parent's way of dishing out a punishment. It's not, most cases, it's not always like that day to day, but obviously, like you attested, that's probably, with your circumstances, that's how it is. But for the majority of people, it's because more cases being adolescents stepped out of line. So it's like, well, you need to come back in line, or it's obviously there's the door. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, with that said, there's also the complete opposite of what my dad, the way he approached life. The complete opposite of that. I saw that as well. I saw parents that didn't care at all, didn't have any guidance for the kid. And that extreme is dangerous as well, right? There has to be a balance. There has to be a medium. There has to be this approach to life where you go, every kid's going to have to learn lessons on his own for the most part. And you cannot control your kid 24 hours a day. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for anybody in the environment. It's not healthy for the kid. That whole idea needs to just go out the door. If the kid is completely passionate about a sport and you see that passion within him, and you're not forcing that kid to go train, you're not forcing that kid to go and do the exercises and learn the techniques and stuff, then fantastic, right? Then guide that kid, push that kid forward. Absolutely. Because he wants it. It's coming from himself, and that's the first signal. It's passion. If someone is passionate about something, you know what? They'll be passionate about, don't let them give up on something, right? So easily. Let them understand that trials and tribulations are a part of that whole process. Don't let them give up on it. But if they begin completely losing their passion over something, that's again a warning signal, right? Because I mean, overall, this is kind of the ebb and flow of living. But again, I was never completely passionate about what I was doing. And the reason for that was I wanted to be an all sport kind of guy. I was a very athletic person. I loved soccer. You call it football? I call it soccer. Okay. I was passionate about basketball. I was passionate about swimming and all that sort of stuff. I wanted to do multiple different things, which in fact would have helped my tennis much more, but I was never allowed to do that. So there has to, again, I'm going back to this again and again, there has to be a certain balance when you're raising your kid. And we have to see the opposite side of things too. I mean, you cannot allow a child to just be on their iPad all day and just, not care and play video games and all that sort of stuff, which I don't know about the UK, but in the Western world, it's getting worse and worse. When you see a family sitting in a restaurant and you got a kid on an iPad rather than making communication and talking about their day and such, that's another extreme where there's no guidance whatsoever, right? And that's kind of the direction we're going with technology in a lot of ways.
But then if we go down that route, Dennis, in terms of the technology aspect, would you think that it's going to develop more anxiety with people because they don't have the communication skills that were commonplace, we'll say, 10, 15 years ago? And obviously that's more from, say, a public speaking perspective. They won't know how to deal with it, and obviously they're going to have that anxiety as a result.
Absolutely. I mean, I lived in Singapore for a number of years. In Singapore, everybody's on their phone, tablet, or laptop. When I was on the train, I was taking photos, I was taking videos of these people, sending it back to my family, and they were going, everybody's looking this way. And number one, the amount of stimulation that you're getting by constantly looking at your device, especially those small devices at the brightness that they were doing, most of them were just basically wasting time. Most of them weren't working on their business. Most of them were playing, games. They were playing games and these aren't the kind of trivia games that are good for your mind, right? These are just stimulating games. So, anxiety in today's world is an epidemic. It's getting worse. It's getting much, much worse. And the reason it's getting worse is that the system that's set in today's world preaches anxiety. In a lot of ways, when you're going to school and you're spending 6-7 hours a day on that stuff, and yes, you're learning certain things, but for the majority of things that you're learning, you'll never use in your real life. And then you go home and do another 3-4 hours of homework. Kids what was the quote? Kids today have the same amount of anxiety levels as mental ward patients in the 1950s or something like that. And, the system preaches this, and then you go off to university, and a lot of kids that I talk to that are in university don't really know what they want to do, and they're stuck in tons of debt, and they're stuck in doing something that they're not truly knowing that they're passionate about yet. And then they go out into the workforce and they look for power and control and where do I belong, and then social interactions and stuff. And then in the workforce, you're shooting for the top, and then you're getting that mortgage, and then you're raising a family, and then you're going into retirement, and then you're dying. The system is created for us to have anxiety, and it never brings out our creative intelligence. It never preaches, a deeper meaning of life. It never preaches get in touch with nature. It just preaches on the idea of do more, be more, right? The to-do lists. And because of this, anxiety is going to happen. It's automatic. It's inevitable. But then you go into the system that, as far as how they treat anxiety. And now you're dealing with medications, and this is my personal opinion. Now you're dealing with medications that are going to open up a whole new batch of worms for you, a whole new batch of problems. Because now you're dealing with the toxicity. Now you're dealing with the addictiveness of these benzos. And this becomes an even bigger problem to try to get off of, right? And then you go into therapy. And therapy preaches the idea of coping and managing anxiety. And now you have these people that you look up to that say, you know what, it's in your genes. It's a part of your lifestyle, this and that. And here are some techniques that are going to help you. And they never get to the root of the problem. They never get to the core beliefs that are creating these symptoms. They only deal with the symptom. And because of that, people are always stuck thinking that, you know what, I'm going to have to live with this forever. And that's where, you know, me and you come into play, and we start to go, well, maybe there's a different way to see things. Maybe there's a different way to function in life. Maybe there's a different focus that we can have. And maybe there are certain tool sets out there that can help me with my mindsets, and therefore can also help me with certain skill sets that are going to help me move forward. And this voice is simply not loud enough, right? Because the majority of what you hear out there is the suffering, is the pessimism, is the negativity, is the idea that I've tried everything. I hope things will change, right? So that's the world we're living in now, man.
But then if you look at it from, say, the youngsters and maybe don't focus on like the now and say go back a couple of years, and you talk about you and I wasn't anxious when I was a child. You don't have fear when you're a child. It's obviously it comes a time when you become into your adulthood. You always have those fears and obviously apprehensions and doubt set in, which you didn't have as a child. So when you bring up that example of people have got the ones that go to school now have got the same capacity of what somebody did in the 1950s. I think that's quite horrifying.
Totally horrifying. Absolutely horrifying, because, I mean, we're very, very suggestible, because in today's lifestyle, people would rather remember than to try to think themselves through problems. It's like the emotional mind is so triggered and wired that people don't realize or ever gain the skill sets to say, you know what, I can think my way through things. And this is where CBT and NLP comes into play, where it says, you know, you don't have to believe that a thought is in fact reality. You know, when we think about cognitive fusion, where people see a thought and take it at face value and say, just because I'm thinking something, that's reality, you know, this is a very dangerous place to live. Or a feeling. I feel anxiety, therefore I am anxiety, right? And people start to create these identities within them. The biggest problem in today's world is that people see themselves a certain way, but they don't really pinpoint the idea that they're only doing things in a certain way. There's a big difference between what you're doing and who you are, right? I'm partaking in anxious behaviors compared to I am anxiety. And people in today's world see themselves as anxious people, fragile, sensitized people. And because they see themselves in this way, their entire reality and their life experience is based around the limit. There's only so much that you can experience. There's only so much that you can do. There's only so much you can say, because your identity is based around fear. If you take that away and say, hey, you're just thinking anxious things, or you're just behaving anxiously. You know, when you think about it and you go, I have a body, or I am a body. When you think about those two statements, one of them you own, and one of them is just something that you have or something that you're doing. So we have to make sure that we separate the idea of what we're doing and who we are, because this is the main component. As soon as you come from a place of, I'm just thinking anxiously, or in a moment or a certain environment, I'm behaving anxiously, that's something that you can change. But if you identify and connect your entire being on anxiety, it's not something that's easily changeable, right?
But then also, Dennis, would you not agree that the way people think, obviously it's two different things as you attest to, obviously using you are the body and then I am the body. Do you think it comes down to, obviously, people kind of disenfranchise themselves from saying, well, this thought I've got in the back of my head is a different entity from myself entirely? But I think it comes back to, yes, it is a part of you and you have to accept that, but it's probably going to the root cause and questioning what I'm actually thinking at this moment in time, in this kind of negative perception and probably perspective. Is it actually true? And question, is it, it might be factual in this moment in time, but in the grand scheme of things, it probably is not the case.
You got it. You absolutely got it. I mean, we live our lives, most people, the majority of people live their lives in a way where they're just trying to get by the day. It's like I wake up in the morning and what do I have to do to survive this day? What do I have to do to survive my boss? What do I have to do to get through the day? Whereas most people never take the time to create their lives. They never take the time to see that they have options in life, to see that, I'm passionate about something. What if I start an online business about that, or start a blog about it, or a podcast about it, or something like that? And maybe that could lead to more financial freedom or time freedom or whatever it is that we internally want more of. But, this idea of people would rather die than to think is so, so very true. Because in my world, because people that come up to me don't understand the power that they have in a certain anxious situation. They don't realize that when you consciously, with enough repetition and emotion, when you consciously start identifying where the core belief started and how you're reacting in that moment, you can begin to change the patterns that you're currently running. But that change for a lot of people equals pain. And because change equals pain for a lot of people, they would rather default to pre-programmed conditioning or what they're currently doing, because there's a certain amount of expectancy there. I'm living my life okay. I'm going to the bar at night. I'm having a couple of drinks with friends and stuff. I enjoy that. I'm okay with my life. I'm maintaining this. And if I think through things and if I try to make my life better, then that's painful, because that's going to take time and that's going to take effort and that's going to take a certain willingness and desire that I really don't want to be, caught up in right now, right? That's kind of the attitude right now, and we have to change that. We have to change that to say, what is thinking through your problems? What is thinking and reframing your past experiences? What is this going to give you? And when we start to think about the pleasure states that changing our behaviors and changing the way we think is going to give us, now we've got the drive. Now we've got the motivation to start moving in that direction, right? And we're not thinking about the effort so much. We're thinking about what the effort is going to give us. Me and you, for instance, right? Anything that we want to achieve, we already have the outcome in mind. We have the goal in mind. This is what I want to feel like. This is what I want to be. This is where I want to be. And because of that, because of the traits that we've developed as athletes, we can say, well, I know where I want to go. Now, what baby steps do I need to take every single day in order to get there? And when I get there, what am I going to hear? What am I going to feel? What am I going to see? And all that sort of stuff. So when you think about the pleasure that you're going to get from the change you're going to create, that's the motivation. Rather than thinking about the effort that you have to put in to change your thought patterns, to change your behaviors, to do all that sort of stuff.
But then you could say also, Dennis, that they're not willing to change, but being in your comfort zone, staying in the same place and being happy in so to speak, in the life that you're living is not a good thing either, because you're very much pessimistic in your outcome in life. Okay, yeah, you think you're happy where you are, but you're not really. So it's like, well, you're thinking by implementing a change is going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. But where you are right now, you're not happy with either. So it's from an emotional standpoint, it's exactly the same. You're in the exact same place and state of mind.
Exactly. I mean, people are stationary, because they don't know what they're capable of, right? They don't know what they're capable of. Me and you, growing up as athletes, we've been in touch with certain feelings and emotions that are so incredible that we want more of that, right? We want more of that feeling. We want more of that significance. We want more of that growth, that contribution. And since people have never raised the standard of their lives and expected more from themselves, they don't know what they're capable of achieving. All they see is their parents and their parents and so on. And it's about the 9 to 5. It's about go to your work. It's about get in the rat race. It's about, get caught up in trying to do more, get caught up in this and that. It's about maintain the lifestyle. And then when this happens, what do people usually do? They move towards temporary pleasures, the couple pints at night, or, the bag of chips, or, whatever. And that becomes the very thing that they look forward to, right? And it's very short lasting. It doesn't last. It's not a sense of, you get no sense of growth in this world. But when people start to model other people and start to say, you know what, my God, look at these people, look at James, look at these people that have achieved so much, and what sort of internal processes do they have? How would they think in these situations? Look at how they act. Look at their posture. Look at their breathing patterns. Look at how they deal with people. Look how calm they are. The best thing you can do, to get started is to begin to find one person in your life or out there as an influencer and say, you know what, how have they achieved what they've been able to achieve, right? I may not want to be a tennis player or a world-class athlete, but I do want to have the sense of progress and moving forward like they have. So how open-minded are they? How do they see themselves? How do they see other people? And you're going to find that when you start to model other people, when you start to pick up on hunches and things that they're going through and how they deal with situations, you start to go, my God, I never saw things in that way, right? But you got to put in the work. You got to take some action, right? I mean, as me and you know very well, doing affirmations all day long and then imagining something happening without taking any form of action leads to you, waiting by the telephone for a call and that call never happening. There's got to be a sense of I've got to do, right? I've got to do, and I've got to do it consistently if I want change to happen. It's the truth.
Well, I think, Dennis, is probably the easiest. Well, we kind of knocked social media and things like that earlier in the episode, but it's probably the easiest time in life to be able grab the bull by the horn. You can engage with influencers very, very easily now, be it Twitter, Facebook, you name it. It's that easy to ask a question, which, we'll say probably a decade ago was impossible.
Absolutely. I mean, people are using social media in a way where it's still hurting them, when in fact they could be using social media to get to a place in their lives they've never been before. There would be no chance of me being able to connect with you, an influencer, if it wasn't for Twitter, right? There would be no chance. I mean, how would I be able to connect with you, and grow this relationship and connect at a higher level? There would be no chance. I'm using social media in a way where it's helping me help other people and help my business and the brand and whatever it is. But, going on Facebook and spending time on news feeds and seeing how other people are living their lives and then connecting it to your own life and seeing how crappy you're living your life and such is such a toxic way to live. And that's the majority of people today. They go on Twitter, and when I go on Twitter, anxiety is like a fad. It's like when you look up hashtags related to anxiety, I had anxiety today, ha, ha, ha kind of thing. oh, it's just a daily everything, check out my anxiety now, and you'll see pictures and videos and this and that, right? And then next thing you know, they're actually stuck in a situation where it's a disorder, and then they go, well, how did I get here? And you're absolutely right. Social media today is the best and worst things that have ever happened, right?
Well, do you think from a negative sort of standpoint? I know we probably shouldn't go down the negative route so much, but do you think it's because people look at it and try and compare themselves to this notion of perfection, which I think our industry and people like with in relation to mindset are probably trying to teach people to get rid of it. There's no such thing as perfection, because I think from a sporting sense, you want to attain perfection, but the bar always moves.
Mm-hmm. Good point. I mean, you're talking about perfection, and it's absolutely true. And the thing is the more people try to be perfect and to portray this life that they're living, you're noticing with perfection, it's a lot about pleasing people. It's a lot about what people will think about me. It rarely ever comes from a place of their higher selves, their inner selves, their own being. It's always, and we live in a world where people have health anxiety. I'll give you an example, because they're scared of what judgments are going to be placed on them when they go into certain environments, like a grocery store or the mall, or a restaurant, and all of a sudden you'll see a health anxiety sufferer, someone who has anxiety, GAD, and you notice that they're sweating, okay? And then when someone starts to sweat, automatically they start to connect that to what people will think about them, if their relationship will stay as strong, if they'll be accepted. And this whole idea of being accepted is the very thing that contributes to so much anxiety in today's world. And what if we gave up the idea of, and I sweat, look, I'm sweating right now. And if I was sitting with people around me right now, I couldn't care less of whether or not those people saw me, sweating a little bit or not, for example, or some people biting their nails or something like that, certain, things that they do. But so much of the anxiety is about what people will think about you if something happens, if you say the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing, if you react wrongly. And when we come from a place of saying the only person I have to be better than, the only motivation I should have in my life is to be better than the person I was yesterday. And better meaning coming from a more calmer place, a more open-minded place, a place where I've got options, a place where I see myself and create self-love, a place of complete acceptance, mindfulness, all that sort of stuff. Am I growing as a person day by day? Or am I trying to please other people? Am I living my life based around what other people will think and say about me? Or am I, in fact, moving in a direction where I'm improving, right, for myself, not for my parents, not for other people, for myself? And when you come from a place like this, the comments and the reactions and the behaviors of other people don't mean anything, because the people that will stick around in your life are the people that will contribute to your life in a more meaningful way. Okay, and the people that leave you are there because of materialistic needs and, and their insecurities as well play a huge part. And this is where we have to come from. If I have a handful of great friends, and that's really all I need, right, at this point. Back in the day when I had anxiety, I felt the need to be accepted by everybody. And as soon as I got criticized, it was like, a volcano erupted. I was like, my God, I'm not doing a good job at living, I've got it, and there was this sensitivity. People live like that every single day. The photos that you see on Facebook, a lot of people will take the selfie, there's that selfie, and with the friends around them, and 30 seconds after that selfie that looks like they're enjoying their lives, they'll go back to the same problems that they were dealing with in the morning, right? And they'll go back to beating themselves up and the world up, So don't believe in selfies. Don't believe in what you're seeing out there as far as pictures and what people are going through. Yeah, the vacation might be looking incredible in that moment, but trust me, there's more stress in that person than there is pleasure.
Well, the vacation and like holidays, and normally a respite from somebody what they're doing on their day-to-day life. It's what would you call it? Like the escapism.
Totally.
But then you did raise a good point there, Dennis, in terms of you shouldn't really care what other people think. I think even my listeners on the show would think I was very much an extroverted person, and in all reality, I'm not. My family is very much the opposite. We're very much introverted. I think because of, say, my business being in the fitness industry, I have had to become an extrovert because that's the only way to survive. So I think on the flip side of that, and I don't know if it's a family trait or not, we're very much, I don't know, anywhere in the street, may it be, I don't know, going somewhere, you will have random people come up to us and speak to us. And I think when I was younger, I would ask be it my mom, my grandmother, say, why is this random, but do you know this person? Why is this random person speaking to you? And then now it happens to me, you're thinking, well, I probably looked at it from a different perspective. It's like, well, what value can that person bring to me by talking to them? It's not gonna hurt me speaking to them. It might actually add something to them. And I think, this has been a few months back, somebody did, and they were kind of a bit apologetic and say, "Do you mind that I'm speaking to you?" No, the train's delayed. We'll have a conversation. I got nothing better to do, so why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, growing up, what were the main things that we were taught? We were taught, don't talk to strangers. Don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. So we grew up not talking to strangers. When in fact, yes, parents were fear-based. Yes, they were trying to keep us safe and all that sort of stuff. Don't talk to strangers. We took that in our 20s, 30s, 40s. A lot of people that don't dive deep and say, you know what? Well, and you see that in today's world where, in Asia, I'm not going to generalize all of Asia, actually. I'm going to go just in Singapore. I like creating conversations. I see myself as a mild, calm guy, but at times I want to, converse with other people, see what's going on. And I would try to create conversations with people, and just, hey, what you reading over there? Or, that's a nice book. I've read that before, whatever. Hey, nice shoes. And in Singapore, it was like it's a threat. It's a threat. It's like, you don't go and talk to somebody that you don't know. That's the kind of attitude over there. And then it's all, when I'm in Vancouver here, it's quite similar, where don't talk to strangers, right? And you're in the tube and you're going for a walk, and all of a sudden, a guy wants to talk to a pretty girl, and all of a sudden it's this idea of being on the offense and women don't like it, or, it's just this idea that when we were kids and when we were mingling with other kids, look how playful we were, look how open we were. My 7-year-old goes to the playground and he makes, 10 friends in a matter of 30 minutes. That's the way we're meant to be. If you look at kids, there's a lot that you can learn just by observing them in playground environments or in sporting environments and team sports and stuff. Just noticing that, I've learned so much from a 7-year-old that, lessons that I never would have gained anywhere else. Things such as being open, mindfulness, and embracing variety in your life instead of making life so secure. But again, this idea that when podcasts such as yours and mine come out, it starts to give people options more than anything. It gives people options on how they see themselves. It gives people options on how they communicate with other people, how they can run their business, how worrying doesn't equal success, how anxiety doesn't equal success. Because a lot of anxiety in today's world as well is a certain pairing. People would rather stick to their anxiety and unconsciously hang on to it because they've kept their husband or wife around for many, many years. And the pairing is anxiety equals stronger relationships. And then you go and work with someone that has anxiety and they fight at some level to keep their anxiety. You know, I've had that tons of times where they got the skill sets, the mindsets, everything like that. But Dennis, I just can't move forward because there's a tight grip there. There's a pairing. There is, my business is successful because I worry all the time and I have anxiety all the time and therefore I'm making this much money. Well, who wants to get rid of that? Right? So.
Oh yeah, but that's probably two evils, better two evils, because nobody wants to get rid of the money, but you don't want the anxiety that goes with it.
Tough place to be, right? Tough place to be, and you know you'll see certain people out there that preach things like hustle and work harder and stuff like that, which is fantastic, but what comes with that is constant stimulation and constant, go, go, go. And when it's constant go, 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 and you're constantly being stimulated and your emotions are running wild, at some point you're going to be emotionally depleted. And when you're emotionally depleted, to get back on the horse becomes more difficult. So the idea of, the connection between my business being successful and me stressing and worrying about my business, that pairing, when you start to say, well, less worry and less anxiety, in fact, creates the same, if not better, quality of work or my business or whatever it is. When you start to create a new pairing and then start to build evidence around, hey, the less I worry and the less anxiety I have, I'm still creating the same results I had, if not better. So now all I have to do is just keep building evidence around that, and therefore my mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health improve, and it gets better in the meantime. You don't want to be the richest person in the graveyard, okay? For people out there, work hard, hustle, blah, blah, blah. If that's, your number one priority and your relationships are dying and your wife hates you and your kids hate you and you got no friends, you got no social life, you haven't taken one moment to take a bath and give back to yourself, then what's the point of all that success?
That's a good point in terms of that, because I think at times, anxiety and success is always going to be at a detriment to something else. So it's are you willing to sacrifice the other things that you would say were important in your life?
Interesting. With anxiety, it's interesting because you have to give up certain things in your life in order to overcome anxiety. And a lot of people are not willing to give up those toxic friends, or give up that certain lifestyle, or give up the bag of chips, or give up, the 9 to 5 or whatever it is. There's certain patterns that you're running that's contributing to your anxiety. A lot of people say, Dennis, I have anxiety out of the blue. Nothing is out of the blue, right? I mean, just because you're not consciously aware of something in the outside world doesn't mean it's not affecting you, right? And that's the power that we're talking about as far as your unconscious mind goes. It's constantly scanning. And if you see a blue painting on the side that reminds you of the panic attack you had 6 months ago, that exact blue painting, and then you become anxious and you don't know why, it's about what you do in that moment. It's not about having the anxiety. That's the truth. It's about how you deal with the emotions and the interpretation that your amygdala caused that creates that fight or flight response. It's what you think, what you do, how you react in that moment. That's the important part with anxiety. It's not about, I have anxiety, I always have anxiety, I always will, this and that. What are you doing in that moment? Okay. And then What do you need to give up in your life in order to start moving forward? Right? But I mean, with all this, it starts with a decision, and people are too scared to make that decision. I'm too scared to make the decision of overcoming anxiety because my therapist or my doctor said I'm going to have to live with this forever. I'm going to cope with it. I'm going to manage it. There's a big difference between managing anxiety and eliminating it from your life. So, when we're talking about anxiety and when we're talking about moving forward in your life, understand that you're going to have to pay a price. What that price is spending more time with your kids. That price is giving up the garbage foods that you're eating, giving up, the beers, giving up that social time sometimes and spending some time on self-development, something like that. Listening to your podcasts, this sort of stuff. And a lot of people are not willing to do that because of the pleasure states it creates for a temporary amount of time.
But then, Dennis, do you not think it's that people aren't willing to look at why they want to do something? It's actually that, and actually that's the root cause, and more so probably within the fitness industry, people are looking at the end result as opposed to looking at the process and seeing, well, you need to do this first to get that end result. Do you think it's because they haven't delved deep enough and looked at their why as to that is some of the reason why they can't overcome certain circumstances?
Interesting. Totally. There's a certain formula that I have when it comes to this resistance. I want something, but I'm not willing to do what it takes or whatever it is, that resistance that you feel. And the first thing is the D, is the dissatisfaction, right? It's about being incredibly dissatisfied with how you're living your life. The family, the amount of money you're making, the way you feel every day. You've got to be completely dissatisfied with how you're living in order for that decision to be made, in order for that change to occur. V is the vision. You, like we mentioned, you have to create a vision in your life because your inner GPS system, your mind, if you don't create a vision for your life and the direction you want your life to go, then it's going to keep you where you currently are. Brooding over. You can be as dissatisfied as you want. I'm dissatisfied. I'm tired of living this way. I'm at the point of no return. But you haven't created what you want, how you want to feel, what you want to see, what you want to hear, what sort of experiences you want in your life. You have to create a vision, and this is where I like vision boards. Vision boards are fantastic because, even if you don't look at them, if you don't really consciously pay attention to them, and they're in your bedroom and you wake up to it every single day, your unconscious is scanning the room. Oh, what's that on the room, right? Whoa, there's $1 million bill on there. Interesting. Well, let's investigate a bit more, right? Or whatever you want to manifest. So you have to have a vision for your life. And then F is your first action every morning, okay? First action every morning is when I wake up every single morning, what kind of attitude do I have? What do I need to do to move my life forward? Because in the first 30 minutes of when you wake up, you are incredibly suggestible, right? You are suggestible. So if you're meditating and you're creating affirmations and you're telling yourself these things and you're feeling the emotions, your unconscious is going to work hard in order for that stuff to manifest. But if you're telling yourself how crap your day is going to be, it's going to be difficult. Okay, you have to wake up every single morning with a certain amount of positive mental expectancy for the day. And the best thing I do every single day when I wake up is, what am I excited about today? Wake up with those words. What am I excited about today? And then in that first 30 minutes, do something that your future self is going to help you, is going to be proud of you for. Okay? And that's the truth. When you put dissatisfaction, vision, and first action every morning into play, you can say goodbye to resistance, right? As long as it's consistent.
Would it also, Dennis, at the end of the day, would you look to reflect on how the day has gone and look at the pros and cons of it, and then obviously use that as a tool to move a step further for the next day?
You got it. You absolutely got it. I mean, with a lot of people I work with one-on-one, the most important tool is what I call your breakthrough journal, which at the end of the day, okay, you have to pinpoint the things that you're proud of from the day, okay? I felt anxiety, but I didn't allow my thinking, my emotional mind to take over. I started thinking myself through the situation. Put that in your breakthrough journal. Today, I woke up in the morning and I did a couple of power poses and I held them for 2 minutes, or whatever. I did imagination exercises, any kind of tool for thought restructuring. Put that in the breakthrough journal. And a lot of people don't realize that when they're starting to create a change, they're starting from kindergarten. You're going into kindergarten again. When we went into kindergarten, it was like, I can't wait to meet those kids. I can't wait to meet my new teacher and to learn new things. People go, well, what do you mean breakthrough? It was I just did one exercise, and a part of you says that's nothing to be proud of. If you see yourself from your current identity state, if you see yourself from a sufferer's point of view and the way you've been living, that breakthrough is not a breakthrough. It's just something you did. But if you see yourself from a person who's progressing, someone who's a student of life now, a student of anxiety, a student of what they want to achieve, now you're coming from a place of being newborn. You're starting off with a blank slate. Every night before you go to bed, you contribute to your breakthrough journal. Every little thing. You're in the grocery store, you felt some anxiety, you rode the wave of anxiety, you accepted the symptoms, you got the apples, the oranges, everything that you needed, you got into the checkout, you didn't try to run away, you didn't try to eliminate the feelings, but you rolled with the feelings. Success. Put that in the breakthrough journal. So you mentioned something incredibly important, and that's just being aware of the things that are contributing to your progress, right? Of becoming a new person.
But then if we touch upon like the kindergarten element, do you think the people that don't see that as progress, obviously they're being pessimistic, because obviously at that age, if you've learned something new, it's a new skill. So it is a progression. So I think you need to look at it probably from that perspective. Obviously look at it through the eyes of yourself as a youngster and being that age again. Mm-hmm. You've overcome something that you've not been able to do before. So it's looking at it from a positive essence, because it's probably because you're looking at it through your eyes as an adult. Mm-hmm. You think it's a mundane task. It's not really anything of significance, mm-hmm. because it's something you probably do. Well, you may not even do to this day because it's a mundane task and it's irrelevant. But back then, it probably would be more significant.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing, is when you go from being a sufferer and you're dissatisfied with your life and you've created a vision, now you're a student, right? Now the next stage is you're a student. Now as you're a student, there's going to be a whole batch of new experiences. You need to see yourself and see the world from new lenses, right? New lenses. Every experience that you have from that moment on is a learning opportunity. Okay, I did something that I'm proud of. If you come from a place of being a student, if you come from a place of, well, I'm 55 years old, what do you mean? I've already learned everything in my life. I know everything and this and that. You come from an egotistical part of your mind, then you know what? Don't even bother trying to change, because you're just going to run into roadblocks all the time. A part of you believes that, you're a know-it-all, you know everything, and you haven't fully dedicated yourself to change. You haven't made that decision. You haven't started over, and you're not a student. You're going to continue being a sufferer. Okay. And then after being a sufferer and then a student, you become a teacher. When you're a teacher, now you've developed self-mastery. Okay. You've developed self-mastery over a number of things. Number one, your thoughts, right? Because I could have a negative thought and then replace it with a positive thought instantly. And therefore I can start to change the angle in which I see something, right? If I'm talking to you and I don't like your hair, right? And then all of a sudden, I start focusing on a different aspect of you, a different angle. I love the sweater because blue is my favorite color. Notice how when I focus on a different angle, right, my thoughts start to change. I start to feel better. But we're so focused on the wrong thing, right, that we keep feeling bad all the time. And because feeling bad is so familiar in today's world, we tend to hold on to it, because anything that's unfamiliar, your mind will have a very difficult time changing. So self-mastery is thoughts, but self-mastery is also words. What sort of words do you hear people say in today's world? Well, I'll never do that. That's not me. That's too difficult. My parents never did it. I'll never do it. Listen to the words that people say and then look at their life. You'll notice that there's a connection there, a huge connection. Change the words, change the reality, change the life, right? So at self-mastery, not only are you're more in control of your thought patterns, you're in control of your words, and now you're in control of your emotions and actions, right? I'm not gonna go to the pub. Instead of going to the pub, I'm gonna go to a seminar, right? Instead of grabbing the bag of chips, I'm gonna start eating seaweed. And which is something I did, which was interesting. It kind of just, replaced the salt that I really needed because my adrenals were fatigued because of all that anxiety. But you can see how you can't delete something. You can't stop smoking. You can only replace smoking. You can't stop doing a behavior. You can only replace a behavior, because a part of you will always want to go back to whatever that feeling is, okay, that you get from smoking or being with those toxic people. So if I'm going to leave a toxic friend, I have to replace that friend with somebody else. I have to put myself in environments that are the type of people that I want to hang around and the person that I want to become, right? And a lot of people try to quit smoking. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to put a patch on, that sort of stuff. My family. 99% of my family smokes, right? I'm the 1%. And when it comes to this, it's like, Dennis, I tried to smoke. I tried to quit smoking and this and that. Well, what does smoking give you as a feeling? Well, it makes me feel joyful. It makes me feel relaxed. It makes me feel, more in touch with other people. It makes me feel cool. Okay. Well, what other thing can you do that will give you that significance and give you that connection to people and give you that cool feeling? What else can you do? Well, I can try yoga. Okay. Well, as soon as you say I'm going to try yoga, okay, that's a recipe for failing. So I'm going to commit to yoga is a completely different word pattern, right? So then, does yoga make you feel cool? Yeah, it sort of does. Does it connect you with other people? Yeah. Does it make you feel good? Yeah. Okay, great. Now you've replaced it. Now you're actually going to long-term quit smoking, right? You see how we're working with this, right?
But then most times, Dennis, it would be most people will replace the cigarette with food. So obviously that's another dangerous. It's probably not as life-threatening, but in the long run it could be. So it's like you say, you're replacing something. You can never get rid of it entirely.
You know what? The truth is that with every habit that somebody knows is hurting them, but they feel the need to do, when I work with people that say, Dennis, I'm overweight. I want you to help me lose more weight. It's not about the weight, right? It's not about the weight. It's about the emotional bankruptcy that you're under and the emotional patterns that you're continuously running and the traumas from your life that you haven't dealt with that's leading you to gain weight, okay? It's never about the weight issue. It's never about the smoking. The smoking is a cover-up for something else. The gaining weight is body armor for something else, right? It's always that way, right? So every time I have someone that says, I want to lose weight, Dennis, the first thing I ask them is, what happened between the ages of 0 and 10? Okay. between the ages of 0 and 10 when you were the most neuroplastic, the most suggestible. You were a sponge. You accepted everything. Your dad did something, you did it. Your mom thought something, you thought it, right? What happened back then? Well, this, and this happened. Okay. Well, you take care of that stuff. All of a sudden, the need to eat more disappears. But so many people in today's world come up with these problems that they have that aren't even the root of what they're dealing with. I want to lose weight. I want to quit smoking. I want to exercise more, this and that. Well, there are things in your life that you haven't dealt with that you need to deal with first. Okay. Then go back and see what you feel about what you've been doing.
But then, Dennis, does that not come back to what we were talking about earlier? We're looking at, obviously, the results and obviously all those comparing and contrasting with what we term perfection in the media, social media, as opposed to, as you talked about there, is looking at what the underlying issue is. And obviously that is a process.
Mm-hmm. Huge process. And processes equal pain in today's world, right? And, in this podcast episode that we're doing, I'm coming from a place of no sugarcoating. You notice? I mean, there is no real, and that's basically how I'm now hardwired to be, because I really, and you as well probably, don't have patience for people that sugarcoat a situation. I'll have people come up to me and say, I want change, this and that, and then I ask them, and we have an incredible session. And then they go about their lives, and I ask them, well, what did you do to maintain this change? Well, not a whole lot, right? And then I'm going, well, what's really going on here, right? So we have to understand that, just because we're discussing this, I'm never going to be taking any of the pain away from what people are experiencing today, because there's so much pain in the world. There's pain everywhere. And we have to understand that this pain was a cause of something. This pain is a cause of some way of thinking about something. This pain is a result of something else, okay? Cause and effect. So all we have to do, okay, is first create the mindset, because a lot of people are looking for that quick fix. They're looking for that pill. They're looking for that technique, that one chapter in the book that's going to eliminate all their problems. And then they go, my God, that's nice. That's great. I'm going to apply that. And then they start to feel better. Next thing you know, their unconscious mind starts to go, well, hey, don't forget about this. You haven't dealt with this root of the problem yet. And then you start to feel crap again, right? And then you start to go, well, that didn't work. So we have to develop the proper mindset as far as, how am I going to create change? And until you have a vision, you cannot create a strategy, okay? You have to first create a vision for what you want, how you want to feel, the different aspects of your life, and then you can start to create a strategy for how to get there, right? We have to get away from the advertising, the marketing, the social media, the messages out there that say you can achieve anything in a moment. Okay? You can have anything you want. You want that red shirt? Go buy it. It's on sale at Zara or whatever it is. You want that pair of shoes? Great. The Yeezys? Perfect. Go to Foot Locker. Right? Oh, we got a problem. We want something. We can have it right away. And then with anxiety, it's the same situation. I got anxiety. It's severe right now. What do? Well, we got two options. We can either commit to 3 months and have long-lasting change, or we can go and take a pill, okay, and feel good temporarily, but then have to up the dose of the pill over and over again so that our body continues to react the same way it did in the beginning, and then open up a whole new can of worms that you didn't even have before, and therefore you're in a situation where things get really complicated, right? So the idea now is to create the mindset, the long-term approach. You want to play the long game as far as anxiety. You want to play the long game as far as achieving what you want to achieve, but you want to start somewhere, right? You have to start somewhere. And that somewhere is the D, V, and F, is to be dissatisfied, is to create so much pain with how your life is right now and what you're capable of, and then creating the vision and then taking the action every morning first thing, right? When you do this, you got a system. And is it going to work in a week? No, it's not going to work in a week. How long have you practiced being pessimistic? How long have you practiced being anxiety, right? Or how long have you practiced doing things the wrong way? Well, Dennis, I practiced for 10 years. Well, what do you expect, right?
But let me ask you this question, Dennis, then. Obviously, my family is very much pessimistic, but if I use myself as the example, I may look at it as, what would I say, for example, I'm doing this placement for 4 weeks, but I have that pessimism that, okay, I may not get the job, but I'm looking at it in the grand scheme of things that it's because I'm preparing myself for, you could say, that negative thought process that may occur. Okay, I may still get the job anyway, but as opposed to somebody saying, oh, I'm doing a wonderful job. Oh, by the way, you're not going to get the job. And obviously what anxiety that comes from it. Do you think one is better than the other, or is they virtually the same?
So the approach that you take towards something, and then, so the approach that you take towards something, like we said, there has to be with NLP, there's this idea of pairings. There's this idea of associations. And also there's this idea of seeing things from a whole new angle. What we need, the biggest problem with, let's say, anticipation anxiety, I'm not going to get the job, and beating yourself up over this, is you're basically focusing on something so much that's creating a certain energy within you. And next thing you know, the truth is that when you accept a suggestion, it's more likely that the next suggestion will be accepted as well. Okay? And the next suggestion will be accepted as well. And so on and so on and so on. So when we put into our mind the idea that, it's going to be difficult for me to get the job, I don't have the skills, whatever it is, then you have another suggestion that says, oh my God, I'm being interviewed by somebody that, that is very intimidating. Then you start to add on that. And then you start to add on the fact that, oh my God, there's 50 other people that's doing the interview. Next thing you know, accepting suggestion after suggestion. The idea now is to focus on what you're going to gain, through the process and after you're done the process. So notice that when I start to focus on a different aspect of that experience, I start to feel differently. Anxiety and excitement are identical as far as feelings go. I could be incredibly excited about something and incredibly anxious about something bad happening to me, and the sensations and the feelings are identical. Okay? So if I can be anxious about something, I can find a way to tweak that and to focus on a different aspect of what it is I'm being anxious of. Therefore, I can start to be excited about it in the moment, right away. So I have an interview. Great. Another opportunity for myself to share my skills that I've been learning. All this personal development, I've got an opportunity now to present myself in a way where I can really create some long-term growth for myself. Great. And you know what? Oh, wow, that interview is in a certain area of the city that I really love. You know what? After the interview, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take a stroll, and it's going to be super fun. I'm going to go to the bakery. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to talk to my old friend over here. Notice that when I focus on what's going to happen in the experience and after the experience, what it's going to give me in return when I do a great job, I'm going to get this job, and how is it going to contribute to changing my life and my family's life? Now I'm turning anxiety into excitement. Okay. Now I'm excited about the experience. And when you start to program and condition yourself in this way, you start to see the good in everything. For instance, I went bonkers for a bit. I knew that coffee was the very thing that triggered more anxiety within me. And I was scared of sensations and symptoms and judgments of people. So during my recovery, I said, I'm going to drink 5 cups of coffee today, right? Throughout the entire day. So there was the morning, 1 cup of coffee, and so on until the evening. And I was anxious for the entire day. Okay. But then I said, you know what? Every anxious moment is an opportunity for me to practice a different approach. So I was anxious, but then I turned anxiety into excitement by thinking about, my God, I'm going to go see my mom later. That's going to be really exciting, right? And then, you know what? I'm so excited for the direction my life is going. I can't wait to get married in 6 months or whatever. Then I started focusing on that. And when I focused on something that created excitement within me, I accepted the feelings that came with that programming that I was under. So those 5 cups of coffee for me, bring it on. Anxiety, I'm not scared. I now just have to focus on a different aspect of what it is I'm going to go into, right? And this is powerful. This is something that your listeners, my listeners, can start to work on today.
But you said that withdrawal from coffee, you could say it from a different way, because obviously that arousal level is going to be lower, and that's going to bring anxiety in itself, because your body's used to having that caffeine at a certain level. So you're going to be, it's like withdrawal symptoms from that, and that obviously brings problems in itself.
Good, totally. Now, my taking action and drinking that coffee was for me to basically think about defying my fears. That's what it was. I had a fear of symptoms. I had a fear of what people would think. And since I created that anxiousness within me, and then I placed myself in environments that also created some anxiousness, I understood after some time that my fight or flight response wasn't going to be tamed, okay, until I placed myself in anxious situations. When I was feeling good, But then all of a sudden a crappy memory from the age 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever popped up. And all I tried to do was try to get rid of that memory rather than trying to deal with it. And that's how most people go about their lives. They don't want to think about the negatives. They don't want to think about the traumas because it's too painful to go there. And therefore, they keep reliving it over and over and over again. So my coffee action that I took that day and drinking 5 cups of coffee was for me to say, hey, amygdala, hey, fight or flight response, guess what? We have nothing to fear, right? We can be anxious. We can go into the grocery store or the shopping mall, or I can talk to that person that I really don't like and causes me anxiety, and I can handle it perfectly fine as long as I focus on different aspects of that experience.
But then also, Dennis, we alluded to this. You've got to take the good with the bad as well. You can't have everything obviously go well in life, because that's not realistic. But on the flip side of it, everything is not bad, because if you probably look at and have this outlook on life, somebody's somewhere in the world is going to be in a similar situation, if not worse. So it's probably that, as we've touched upon, it's being somewhere in between.
Totally. You know what? The truth is that in my world, when I work with people, there's no such thing as a bad behavior. There really is no such thing as a bad behavior, because every behavior is you're trying to gain something from every behavior. Someone who smokes is trying to gain something from that smoking. Okay. Someone who's creating anger, you can use that anger in a different way and say, you know what? It's fine. But whatever you're getting caught up in behaviorally, there's a time and place for it. But we have to understand that we can't look at a bad behavior and just judge it as being a bad behavior, because we're trying to gain some kind of human need through that behavior. Okay? That's the truth, because you could look at someone and say, you know what? That's a bad person. That's a really bad person. But the truth is that that person, okay, by what that person's doing, they are gaining something. They are feeling something. They are, in their minds, achieving something. They are feeling significant. They are gaining love and connection from people. You know, when someone holds a gun up at somebody's head, okay, and has been disregarded his entire life, there's a certain thing that he's trying to gain from that activity, that behavior. He's trying to gain significance, right? You'll see it in cartoons all the time, where there's someone that's been disregarded, not listened to for so long, and then all of a sudden something happens and they say, you know what, I'm going to gain significance in this way. People are going to start listening to me, and I have a voice, whatever it is. So we can't disregard the behavior and say, hey, stop doing that. What we have to do is say, what is that behavior giving somebody? Okay, what is it making them feel? And how can they gain this in a more positive, productive way, right? The smoking, same thing. The gaining weight, the food, you know, the toxic people, you know, the toxic world that they live in, whatever it may be, whatever behavior that they're going through and they're partaking in, there's something that behavior gives them. What else can you do that will give you the same feelings, that will help you move forward, but in a more productive way, where you'll live longer, where you'll be healthier, where you'll be emotionally more stable, right?
But doesn't it come back to what people perceive as being bad? Obviously, it's an assumption, and what's the word I want? I can't think of the word. But it's you are putting how you perceive something onto somebody, and like you said, it might not always be the case as to why they're doing it. It's very much it is the first impression of somebody, which is very, very humanistic of us. That's the first thing we take of somebody, be it good, bad, or indifferent. Mm-hmm. That's kind of our first inkling of that's what the person's like all the time, which is probably not the best way of going about things. You should, in theory, give somebody a second chance, but in most cases that doesn't occur.
Great point, right? Because we live in such a judgmental world. You know, we judge people by what they say, we judge people by what they do, and then we attach labels to them. They are this. This person is panic disorder. This person is anxiety disorder. This person is GAD. You know, and next thing you know, these people live with these labels for their entire lives, because now it's an identity. Now it's a part of them, right? When you label somebody, the way you react to that person in the future and what you think about that person will be based around that label. Someone who's a social butterfly, you know, you'll think about that person in a certain way all the time. Someone who you see as being overweight, you'll attach whatever overweight means to you to that person. So they're sluggish, they're lazy, they're this, they're that. When in fact, it could be the total opposite of the truth, right? So we have to be really careful with these judgments we place on people, because it doesn't help the person. It doesn't help you. It limits the way you see people in the world. It limits the way you see yourself. And through this process, the only person you're really hurting is you. If we come from a place of being, you know, more flexible and saying, well, it's just something that they're doing, it's not who they are. Okay, now it's an activity, it's not an identity, right? Now it's different. Now it's like, oh, it's fine. They are fine. And then you start to grow relationships with that person, whereas before you probably said, I don't hang around people that are anxious. I don't hang around people that are depressed. I don't hang around people that make a certain amount of money. You know, rich people are snobs, you know, this sort of thing. And so when we put up those blind spots, it tends to really affect us, right? But when we come from a place of being more open-minded, and say, oh, it's just something that they said or something that they did, then that person begins to become more flexible in their thinking, right? And this is huge what you bring up, because we're always judging. We're always judging. Our minds are, the filters in our minds always delete information, distort information, and generalize information. So with this, we create our reality in our world. We have to be careful what we delete. We have to be careful how we modify information that we're getting, because it's causing us more pain and more anxiety. Right?
Well, I think it goes probably even a step further than that, Dennis, because I think society very much wants to put people in boxes.
Totally. Absolutely. You nailed it, right? People are in boxes. It's like, we tend to think of ourselves as our name, Dennis Simsek, it's like, and everything that went along with that throughout the growing up years, I am, when in fact we're so much more than that. We live in a world where the system and society tells us that we can't do and can't shoot for our dreams, right? We can't shoot for our goals and this sort of stuff, because that's only for the people that are special, right? That's not for you. And then what starts to happen is we start to talk ourselves out of things. But you're absolutely right, where people are placed in boxes today. What do you do for a living? I am an accountant. Okay. Well, that whole I am is now, because you see yourself as an accountant, everything that you do every single day will be based around, I am an accountant. You'll start to meet only accountant friends. You'll start to just, you'll focus on numbers all the time rather than focusing on maybe other things. Someone who says, I am anxiety. I am generalized anxiety. I have this. I am panic disorder. I have panic attacks, this sort of thing. When you start to create these types of identity statements for yourself, you create blind spots to anything that goes against that identity. So someone who's anxious will never walk down the street and see those people beside them that are hugging and kissing, that are in fact, living more calmly or relaxed. They'll never see the poster on the side that says, that gives the person a sense of calmness. Have you meditated today? They won't pinpoint that. Your unconscious mind won't pay attention to that. But if you see yourself as an anxious person, the stuff you will pay attention to is, have you got your heart checked lately? You're going to see that poster. Bills. Have you paid your bills lately? You're going to do that, because these are related to the way you see yourself, right? And this is not conscious. Remember that what we said, something, you don't have to consciously be aware of something in order for it to affect you. Right? And this is a dangerous world we're living in. That's why it's so important that we take care of a couple of things. Number one, our beliefs and values. What are our values? What do we believe? We have to go in deep and say, what? How are these beliefs helping me about someone or something about my life? Do I need to change my life's metaphor? Do I have to look at life differently? Life is now an exciting roller coaster ride. When I think of life like this, all of a sudden, it's topsy-turvy, and I'm allowed mistakes, right? Then I have to go in and start to shift my identity. Going from a football player to a basketball player is not easy, right? But it is possible. So we have to understand that whole process.
And my last question for you, Dennis, before we wrap up the show, if you had to summarize this entire episode that we've just done into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
Oh, this is a good one. I would say, change the way you see yourself and you'll change your reality. Because until you change the way you see yourself and change the internal processes that you're going through, you're never going to get that car that you want. You're never going to build that relationship that you want. Too many people today are trying to change their external, okay? rather than changing their internal. What mindset do you go into interviews? How do you wake up in the morning? Do you wake up with positive mental expectancy, or do you wake up thinking, you know what, today's going to be just like yesterday? So change the way you see yourself, and you'll change your reality in the long run.
I love that quote. So once again, Dennis, thanks for coming on the Mindset Game podcast.
Thank you, my friend. Truly honored.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And before I forget, I would really appreciate it if you would be so kind as to leave a short written review, as it helps to get the podcast more notoriety, and it would be more visible in future to others, and thus helping more people, which my guests and I are all about. Once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time for another episode of the Mindset Game podcast.